They wear masks made of charm and call it charisma. They speak in riddles, compliments sharpened into hooks, and draw you in with a promise that you are special, that only they understand you. But what you don't realize at first is this: what they understand is not you. It's how to use you. What they seek isn't connection, it's control. They aren't monsters in the way we imagine them: loud, aggressive, obvious. No, they are architects of illusion, masters of mimicry. They study human behavior the way a predator studies movement in the tall grass. They learn your weaknesses by mimicking your strengths. They mirror your dreams, reflect your fears, and then slowly they begin to rewrite your reality. At first, it feels like being seen. And that's the trap. Because what you're feeling isn't love, it's surveillance. You think they're listening, but they're recording. You think you're being supported, but you're being studied. And every detail you reveal, every emotional tick you expose, becomes a thread in the web they're spinning around you. They don't attack directly. They erode, slowly, strategically. They don't scream, they whisper. They don't demand, they suggest. And every suggestion is a step away from yourself and a step closer to their design. They don't want your heart. They want your identity. And once they've rewritten who you think you are, they've won. But here's the paradox: their power isn't real. It's reactive, dependent. It only exists because you're giving them something: your attention, your fear, your need to be understood. You are the battery. Remove the current, and the illusion begins to flicker. That's where your power lives. Not in confrontation, but in starvation. Not in fighting their lies, but in removing your truth from their reach. Because these puppeteers thrive on strings, and the moment you go still, the moment you stop dancing to their rhythm, they lose control. They don't fear being hated. They fear being irrelevant. They don't crumble when you yell. They crumble when you vanish. Emotionally, psychologically, when you become a closed door they can't pick, a silence they can't interpret, a mystery they can't manipulate. To reclaim yourself, you must become unreadable, not cold calculated, not cruel controlled. You don't react. You observe. You don't explain. You withhold. You turn your soul into a fortress and let them knock against the gates in vain. They'll try everything: flattery, guilt, rage disguised as remorse. They'll pretend to be wounded, to be lost, to need your light. But understand this: their darkness is not an accident. It's a strategy. And your light was never a treasure to them. It was a tool. The more silent you become, the louder they panic. The less you engage, the more reckless they get. And in that recklessness, they reveal themselves not to you, but to the world. Because while you are stepping back, they are unraveling forward. Don't announce your awakening. Let them believe they still own your mind. It's the illusion of control that makes them bold. And boldness is where they overreach. You don't need to trap them. They walk willingly into their own downfall when they believe you're still asleep. The strongest counterattack is never the one they expect. They're prepared for rage, for revenge, for tears and pleas. What they can't prepare for is indifference, calm, silence that echoes louder than any scream. When you become the ghost of their manipulation, the shape they can no longer mold, they lose the script. And without the script, they have no stage. This isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. Reclaiming your mind, your peace, your selfhood. They build mazes with their words, but silence is the way out. They try to trap you with noise, but detachment is the blade that cuts through the web. And here's the secret: you don't have to win. You just have to walk away whole. You don't have to destroy them. You simply have to stop being their reflection. They survive by projecting, but when the mirror refuses to show them the image they crave, they shatter. They speak endlessly, not to communicate, but to confuse. Words become their camouflage. Charm is their armor. But all of it is paper thin when held up to clarity. That's your weapon: clarity without confrontation. Stillness without submission. Let them perform. Let them boast. Let them believe. And while they talk, you listen. While they posture, you plan. While they manipulate, you document. Every word, every shift, every inconsistency, log it. Not for revenge, for insight. Because one day, they will turn the story against you. And when they do, you will have the receipts. Cold, clear, undeniable. Do not try to expose them too soon. That's their battlefield. Instead, redirect the story, one subtle word at a time. One strategic question in public. One well-timed pause in private. You're not confronting, you're reframing. You're not accusing, you're inviting doubt. And doubt, once planted, grows roots. People begin to notice. They won't say it at first, but they feel it. The contradictions, the cracks, the patterns, and eventually the mask slips. Not because you ripped it off, but because it was too heavy to hold. You don't need applause. You don't need recognition. Let them believe you're passive. Let them underestimate your silence. And when the curtain falls, they'll look for someone to blame. They'll point at everyone but themselves. Let them, because the truth doesn't need defending. It just needs time. This is the path of psychological mastery, the art of emotional invisibility. You become a void, calm, alert, precise. You don't give them what they want. You give them nothing. And in that vacuum, their power collapses. Every accusation they make, they believe first. Every insult they hurl is a mirror turned outward. You must see this clearly. Their tactics are not personal. They're patterned, recycled, used on everyone who has what they lack: peace, authenticity, emotional depth. You don't fix them. You don't heal them. You survive them. And then you outlast them. Because that's the real victory, not proving them wrong, but reclaiming the parts of yourself they tried to possess. When they tell the story, you will be the villain. Let them. The truth isn't loud. It's patient. And when the storm settles and the spotlight fades, the story that remains will be the one built on facts, not fear. Let them talk. Let them spiral. Let them twist. You stay still. You stay clean. You stay silent, not as a victim, but as a tactician. You're not disappearing. You're positioning. You're watching them collapse into the void they tried to pull you into. And when the dust settles, you'll realize something profound. You never needed to win against them. You just needed to stop losing yourself to them. That is the moment you reclaim everything. That is power. Not loud, not violent, not vindictive, just unshakable. Stillness as a strategy, detachment as a weapon, clarity as revenge, and silence, strategic, surgical silence as the final cut. And here's where the subtle art deepens. Because once you've drawn the narcissist into comfort, once you've lulled them into believing they've won, you begin to shift the soil beneath their feet. Quietly, without alarm. They expect a challenge, but they never expect erosion. Not of their image, not of their audience, not of the story they've spent so long perfecting. You don't yank the curtain down. You loosen the threads, one thread at a time, until their mask slips of its own weight. That is power. Real power is not in the confrontation. It's in the reframe, not attacking their character, but questioning the context, not screaming the truth, but planting just enough ambiguity that doubt takes root. And doubt, once it grows, does more damage than any accusation ever could. Doubt spreads silently. It erodes trust. It turns admirers into skeptics. It turns enablers into observers. And once people begin to watch instead of worship, the narcissist's illusion begins to collapse. Not in a blaze, but in a flicker. You don't need to light the fire. You only need to let oxygen find the cracks. Because narcissists, for all their charm and charisma, build everything on perception. That's their currency, their religion, their drug. And when perception shifts, they lose the only thing that ever truly mattered to them: control of the narrative. You take that away, and what's left? Just a figure scrambling to rewrite the story in real time, panicking as the audience begins to notice the discrepancies, the inconsistencies, the lies beneath the gloss. This is not about revenge. It's about revelation. Let the truth reveal itself through their own unraveling. They don't fear exposure. They fear loss of influence. And the moment they realize they no longer have the power to shape how they're seen, they begin to rot from the inside out. That's the turning point. But it's not time to celebrate. This isn't a victory parade. This is psychological warfare. And in warfare, silence is not the end of communication. It's the sharpest form of it. You must remain still, focused, calculated. The narcissist will flail. They'll throw out bait in all directions: guilt, tears, rage, even nostalgia. Don't bite. They'll try to remind you of the good times, the real connection, the understanding they claim no one else offers. Don't fall, because none of it is real. None of it was ever about you. It was always about the control they could extract through affection, a performance dressed in sincerity, a trap disguised as intimacy. And now that they feel the control slipping, they will become desperate. Desperation is not a sign of remorse. It is a symptom of withdrawal. What they're experiencing is not regret. It's panic. Panic at the loss of influence, the fading of admiration, the death of relevance. They will say anything to avoid it. But listen to the tone, not the words. The words will sound apologetic. The tone will reek of calculation, because they don't want you back. They want your reaction back. They miss the control, not the connection. And if you respond, even with anger, they'll take it as proof that they still matter, that they still exist in your mind, that they still own a part of you. Don't give them that satisfaction. Detachment must become your religion. You are not here to forgive. You are not here to argue. You are here to vanish, not physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, because the greatest form of punishment for someone addicted to control is not confrontation, it's irrelevance. Make them invisible in your reality, and watch how they deteriorate without your emotional oxygen. Narcissists need a mirror, but you've become glass with no reflection. They speak, and there's no echo. They manipulate, and there's no effect. That's when the spiral begins. Not immediately, slowly, subtly, but inevitably. They will overcompensate. They will try harder, louder, bolder, but every attempt will be more transparent than the last. Their desperation will begin to show, and the world once enchanted by their spell will begin to question. Now, that's when your silence becomes a weapon, not a blade that cuts, but a vacuum that reveals. In your absence, everything about them becomes clearer. People start to remember things differently. They start to see the patterns you once tried to explain. You don't have to tell them anymore. They start connecting the dots themselves. You are no longer the voice screaming truth into denial. You've become the echo they can't ignore. Because silence, strategic silence, creates space. And in that space, truth takes root. This is the art of quiet dismantling. It's not explosive. It's not cinematic. But it is thorough, ruthless, complete. When the narcissist finally looks around and sees their circle shrinking, their image fraying, their script failing, they'll look for someone to blame. Always. But there will be no battle they can point to, no enemy they can publicly name, because you never fought, you never screamed, you never struck. You simply stopped playing, and they collapsed under the weight of their own illusion. That's the final twist. They orchestrated their own downfall. You just stopped rehearsing the lines they wrote for you. You become the shadow they can't catch, the silence they can't decode, the absence that screams the loudest truth of all. You no longer exist in their narrative. That's not abandonment. That's liberation. And it terrifies them because they built their identity through you, through the way you responded, the way you praised, the way you pleaded. You were the mirror, and now it's gone. So they turn to others, frantically, repeating the script, repeating the lies, hoping for another mirror. But this time, people start to notice the cracks, the desperation, the inconsistency. You didn't destroy them. You didn't expose them. You simply left. And your absence did the rest. But this is where most people falter. They want justice. They want closure. They want validation. Resist that urge. Because justice from a narcissist is a performance. Closure is a trap. Validation is bait. You don't need to be understood by them. You don't need to hear them admit the truth. That's not power. That's dependence. And dependence is their territory. True power is when you no longer need their words. When their voice becomes irrelevant. When your silence becomes a monument to everything you endured and everything you overcame. That's the kind of power that lasts. Not because it was loud, but because it was untouchable. And here's the most dangerous truth of all: the narcissist never believed you'd walk away. They thought they had you mapped, that your compassion was eternal, that your forgiveness was predictable. They mistook your loyalty for blindness, your patience for weakness, your empathy for obedience. But now they're facing a version of you they never imagined. Cold, silent, unreadable. And it terrifies them because it means they never really knew you. It means their illusion of control was always fragile, always fake. And once they realize that, the game ends. Not with a scream, but with a void. A void they can't fill, a silence they can't escape. A mirror that finally reflects what they've spent a lifetime avoiding. This is how you reclaim your power. Not by winning an argument, not by proving them wrong, but by becoming ungovernable, emotionally sovereign, psychologically untouchable. You don't destroy narcissists by becoming them. You destroy them by becoming immune, by mastering yourself so fully that nothing they say, nothing they do can reach you. That is true detachment. That is strategic liberation. And it's not something you announce. It's something you embody, quietly, completely, irreversibly. When they come back, and you will feel the pull, the nostalgia, the questions. Don't answer them. Don't explain. Don't clarify. You owe them nothing. Let them talk to the silence. Let them plead with the absence. Let them project onto the void. You've graduated from the game. You no longer play on their board. You design your own. And on your board, there are no narcissists. Just lessons. Just clarity. Just space where chaos used to live. That is the ending they never saw coming. That is the closure you never have to ask for. Because in silence, you found yourself, and in stillness, you discovered your edge. Let the narcissist rage. Let them distort. Let them perform. You remain untouched, watching, calm, cold, complete, because now you are the power.